In many ways, Kathleen Kennedy's professional career started for real with Indiana Jones, movies that she produced alongside George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Let's be honest here, it was in no small part that history and the career path she would have by hitching along with Steven Spielberg that enabled her to become the head of Lucasfilm in the first place. And so it was only fitting that she produced the final Indiana Jones movie, a movie that would be made without Steven Spielberg and without George Lucas, thereby showcasing how important Kathleen Kennedy always was to proceedings and to the creative process.
Yeah, and to have Indiana Jones back, I think, not just for those of us who made the movie, but for everybody else. I mean, it's such an excitement to be having fun with this character again.
Which is to say, not important at all, because like she did with both Star Wars and Willow before, she failed again with Indiana Jones. But she didn't just fail, she failed in a humiliating fashion, because after less than a week in release, The Dial of Destiny, a movie with an Avatar-level production cost, was just beaten at the daily box office by The Sound of Freedom, a low to medium budget feature, and the absolute last film Disney would want their biggest movie of the year to lose out to, which it just did. Stay till the end, and I'll break down why being beaten by that movie in particular adds insult to injury. In this editorial, I will begin with how embarrassing these Indiana Jones box office numbers are for Kathleen Kennedy and what this does for her legacy, before exploring the additional embarrassment that comes with losing out to The Sound of Freedom in particular. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny just exposed to Hollywood what the rest of the world that's paying attention already knew. Kathleen Kennedy's success is exclusively due to her hitching a ride with Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and Frank Marshall, her eventual husband. I submit that if he had hooked up with some other woman instead of Kathleen, then chances are that other woman would have been praised as the best female producer of all time instead of Kathleen Kennedy. Because it's clear now, all she did was hitch a ride and be credited with the success that wasn't really hers. When the moment came for Kathleen to prove her merit without Steven Spielberg, without George Lucas, she failed. First with Star Wars, then with Willow, and now, and perhaps most embarrassingly of all, she failed with Indiana Jones, the one Lucasfilm property she was actually working on back during its inception. We've already covered how badly it failed at the box office, and why that failure was entirely predictable. Case in point, our good friend Matt Kadish of Salty Nerd Podcast fame pointed out 2 years ago that the movie was doomed because Spielberg wasn't directing, but Kennedy was producing. This tweet incidentally prompted a reply from director James Mangold, which he surely regrets, because his ensuing unhinged meltdown led to Kadish forever after being known as the Mangold Slayer. That aside, it was perfectly obvious to outside observers that Kathleen Kennedy was simply not suited for the task of managing Lucasfilm. Now, even pundits with closer ties to Hollywood are acknowledging that Kennedy was never all that.
She made her career starting out as his assistant and then producing Spielberg's movies, but clearly was not a part of his creative process at all. None of that movie magic rubbed off on her, not even a smidge. In fact, she seems to have negative movie magic. Perhaps Kathleen Kennedy, you could argue, is more of a Roy Disney, right? A numbers business person, and not a Walt, the creative. But she seemed to have not been able to get along with any directors either. I think Lucasfilm, from a business perspective, is even a mess. So what is she really bringing to the table at this point?
So yeah, that's what Indiana Jones has done for Kathleen Kennedy, unraveled her legacy. Alas, the movie unraveled at the box office too. In our post-mortem, we already covered the tepid box office, but now, courtesy of Valiant Renegade, we have an update. On Tuesday, July 4th, Indiana Jones lost the #1 spot at the daily box office chart to a new entry premiering that day, namely The Sound of Freedom. That's embarrassing for chiefly two reasons. The first of which is that movie has a listed budget of only $14 million with a marketing budget of a fraction of that. Such a movie should not be able to earn more on its opening day than the Avatar-level budgeted Dial of Destiny did in its 5th day of release. Yet it did. And that is even more embarrassing for Disney for another reason altogether. I can't say here what The Sound of Freedom is about due to the community guidelines of this platform, but I will say it is based on true events. Jim Caviezel considers it the second most important film he has ever done behind The Passion of the Christ, and it has crazy good word of mouth. Also, there is a level of irony to it beating a Disney tentpole, albeit at the daily box office, not overall. Yet, at any rate. The movie was actually completed in 2018 and set to be distributed by 20th Century Fox, which not too long after was acquired by Disney, meaning The Sound of Freedom at that point became a Disney film that Disney could distribute through whichever channel or whichever sub-brand they deemed fit. They chose to bury it. Disney's intention was for the movie to never be seen by anyone. I'll refrain from speculating on why that might be. In their defense though, they didn't feel like burying it too hard, because when the filmmakers approached Angel Studios about acquiring the worldwide distribution rights from Disney, Disney agreed to sell, and Angel Studios were later able to crowdfund $5 million towards a theatrical release. And it is that crowd-funded theatrical release which right now is beating Indiana Jones at the daily box office. How's that for irony? I mean, nothing would have prevented the Dial of Destiny from tanking like it did. But if Disney had kept and released The Sound of Freedom under the Fox banner years ago like they should have, then it, at the very least, would not have added insult to injury by beating Indy at the daily box office now. So, will you be seeing The Sound of Freedom? Will more of the industry question if Kathleen Kennedy really is all that? Let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments.